4 p.m. We're bringing developing news to the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon, the Story Conference. I'm Ed Lingao. Some stories you're watching this midweek. Oh, it's a Wednesday, finally. January 7. Senator Amy Marcos has made several allegations during her press conference earlier today. She suspects government aid allocations in the 2026 budget could be used to advance a possible impeachment effort against VP Sara Duterte. She expects another impeachment complaint against Duterte to be filed in February when the one-year ban lapses. The presidential sister also says she got information that criminal charges will be filed against several members of Congress as early as January 15. That's over anomalous flood control projects. Senator Marcos likewise alleges that the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, or the ICI, will be disbanded by February. Meantime, ICI Director Brian Hosaka says they have not yet received any information from Malacanang regarding the body's supposed disbandment by next month. The commission headed into the new year with 3 official members left: Hosaka, Chairman Andy Reyes, and Special Advisor and Investigator Rodolfo Azurin Jr. Resigned from ICI are Special Advisor and Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong and Commissioners Rogelio Babe Singson and Rosana Fajardo. Health Secretary Ted Rosa denies reports that he is set to be replaced. Rosa says Palace Press Officer Under Secretary Claire Castro has already clarified there is no cabinet shakeup at this time. He also stresses that all cabinet members serve at the pleasure of the President and that he remains focused on carrying out the DOH mandate. Albay Governor Noel Rosal says over 2,800 residents living near Mount Mayon have been evacuated so far. This comes after PHIVOLCS raised Alert Level 3 over the volcano due to its rising magma activity and rockfall. Rosal adds that the number of residents to be evacuated could reach 50,000 if Mayon's alert level will be raised further to 4. And the bar exam 2025 results are already out. A total of 5,594 examinees have passed, representing a passing rate of 48.96%. Kalahati. Jen Donil Ray Timola of the UP emerged as board top-notcher. The Supreme Court says the oath-taking of new lawyers will be held on February 6. And joining us today, hindi po siya bar top-notcher, hindi rin siya nagbar, hindi rin siya abogado, at hindi siya graduate. Pero siya po ngayon ang ating prize political pundit, si Tito Raul Llamas.
Hi, magandang hapon po sa inyo lahat. Happy Three Kings.
Isa ka magandang ehemplo sa mga sa lahat ng mga nag-aaral.
Parang marami ko kontra ron.
See what you can do with perseverance, effort, and in the sense of mission.
Oo nga, nag-interview sa akin sa Rappler kaso Jinglish eh.
Jinglish?
Hirap na hirap ako eh.
Bakit Jinglish? Anong Jinglish?
Jinglish yung kwan eh. Interview eh.
Anong Jinglish?
Jinglish. Ibig sabihin, English sa U-belt. Jinglish. Hindi ka kasi taga U-belt eh.
U-belt ba yung US? Hindi ka naman U-belt din eh. Tambay ka na siguro doon.
Si Ami ba? Saan ba gumagawa?
Si Ami UP yan, di ba?
UP ba yan?
Author natin sa kanya, ang ating editor-in-chief ng Philippine Star, si Ami Pamintuan ng Paranaque.
Yan.
Ay, happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Ami,
siya naman sa bar yan, ibang bar yan. Ibang bar. Ang binibisita niya.
Kasama ko doon sa bar na yun, si Bembel Rocco.
Ano may inulo?
Si Bembol, wall prick yun eh. Kung gano'n siya kakontrabida sa pelikula, gano'n siya kakontrabida sa tunay na buhay.
Naku, baka magpapun tayo dyan.
Hi, Bembol.
Kahapon ba yung Three Kings kahapon pa? Tapos na po ang Pasko.
Eh, wala pa yung mga regalo ng 3 hari eh. Hinihintay ko pa eh.
Kaya puro bad news na uli ngayon. Mukhang puro on the way out ang mga
Ayun sinasabi ni Heydarian na nakita na daw niya yung warrant of arrest ni Bato. Totoo ba yun?
Diffusion, That's a diffusion order.
Meron na rin kayo noon?
Diffusion order yon, hindi siya exactly yung regular arrest warrant eh.
Paliwanag.
What's the
Kaya
difference?
tama si Boying Remulla, doon may kopya siya. It's a diffusion order.
What is it exactly? And what makes it different?
Yung diffusion order, hindi ina-upload sa mga website ng either ICC or Interpol.
Pero pwede ka
Para
nang
hindi
hulihin.
ma-alert yung aarestuhin.
Pero pwede ka nang
Hindi
hulihin.
nila ipapaalam, oo.
Pero pwede ka nang hulihin.
Imbis na yung red notice o kaya yung whatever notice, i-upload yun ng Interpol. Etong diffusion order, wala. Hindi malalaman. So I guess, alam ni Bato na may ganon, kaya siya nagtatago.
So for all practical purposes, it serves as a warrant of arrest except that it is not made public.
Hindi, yan din yung nakita ni President Marcos nung di ba?
Yung kay
Sinabi niya, madaling
Digong.
araw, meron siyang kopya noon. Meron din ako na madaling araw ko rin nakuha. It's a diffusion order.
By the Interpol or by the ICC?
Interpol. Interpol yun.
ICC through the Interpol.
Sa Interpol binigay.
It's
Interpol mag-implement
It's from the ICC to the Interpol.
wala naman kasing enforcement powers
Yeah,
ang
yung
ICC.
ICC.
So ipapasa nila sa Interpol or other bodies.
So basically, the diffusion order is a document given by the ICC to the Interpol.
Correct.
It's a warrant of arrest. Hindi lang siya
apprehend,
hindi lang siya nakalantad. Para hindi
It is not
mawarningan yung huhulihin.
But other than that, it's basically the same.
Yes.
Hindi lang siya publicized.
Yes.
Yung mga Interpol member states na mahigit 190, I think, at this point, sila yung committed na sumunod dahil yun ang commitment nila sa Interpol. Kapag may ganyan, yung local law enforcement ang magkikarry out niyan.
Okay, but to that point, Ami, okay, so now we know what the diffusion order is, but are you aware of any such order already released with regard to Bato de la Rosa?
Ngayon, wala akong kopya nung kay Bato, ha? Pero sinabi nga ni Boying, last year pa, meron na siyang kopya, eh.
Ay, sinasabi niyang informal, unofficial sources.
Yun, oo.
Kasi
Hindi natin alam kung yun na yung diffusion order.
ito may sinasabi raw si Richard Heydarian na na nakita na raw niya. For all practical purposes,
Baka nga meron.
it already is in existence as far as he can tell.
Actually, yung kay Bato dapat last year pa eh. Late last year eh. Ang ngayong etong first quarter, dapat yung isa pang kasama niya ang mai-issuehan yan eh.
Sino yun?
Hindi ko alam kung bakit na-delay. Pina-Christmas muna siguro.
Yung ba yung alleged financier?
Yun yata yung may kaso sa ombudsman ngayon.
Oo.
Para sa Parmali.
Oo. Yung pangalawa, dapat siya yung
Isa lang naman ang may kaso
first
sa
quarter.
ombudsman sa Parmali. Senador?
Hindi ko alam yun.
We're talking about
Wala pa
ICC,
yata.
Yes.
Sino yan? Yung financier. Ay, siya. Ikaw, ang dami mo kasing paikot-ikot eh.
Isa lang naman ang may kaso sa ombudsman dahil sa Parmali. Di ba sinampan ni Senator Trillanes? Dami nga niya ebidensya, di ba?
I got you now. Okay, I
Nawala
got you
ako.
now. Ang point of reference ko kasi is in the Senate hearings, siya yung tinuro na na nag-arrange ng mga payments.
Sabi ni siya may babae.
Si Garma.
Si Garma.
Yun.
Yun.
Ba't yung bagitin ng pangalan?
Ha?
Sige, huwag na bagitin ng pangalan.
Para kunyari, misteryo. Kunyari lang.
So that's what we're watching out for. Anyway, si Richard Heydarian will be joining us in 5 minutes daw via Zoom. Siguro nagsusuklay lang siguro.
Matagal yun. Hindi kaya ng 5 minutes yun. 50 minutes.
Nagtatali pa ng kanyang cravat. Is that how you pronounce it? Cravat?
Sa akin, less than 5 seconds. Ayos na buko.
Magsusuklay ka. Ang gagawin mo lang na, gagawin mo lang.
Si Richard, marami pang kung ano mga kulot-kulot na hindi ko maintindihan yung buhok nun.
Sunod tayo. Anyway, Abby, we'll have Richard in 5 minutes. He's going to join us via Zoom kasi sabi nga niya, I think it was a vlog ba or ano?
Nakuha raw niya kay Montulpo. Kung kay Montulpo kasi, bawasan mo ng 90%. Di ba, Ami?
Ako wala akong kopya.
Oo.
Well, let's see what Richard saw. Magpakwento tayo kay Richard. Of course, without making any declaration as to whether or not it's confirmed or not. Basically, let's ask him lang what he saw, and let's see from there kung ano yung nilalaman ng kanyang supposedly nakita. Ami, alam mo ba yung headlines yan?
Yung mga di ba merong mga debate ngayon diyan sa soft pork barrel na sabi nga ng yung official release kasi ng Malacanang depoliticize na daw yung aid yun na nga yung pinagtatalunan natin, di ba? Ang problema yung endorsement before accessing the aid. Kaya sabi ngayon ng
pinagtatalunan.
Medyo nahirapan nga si Secretary sagutin. Diba, medyo nahirapan
ilalabas
niya.
daw yung guidelines on guarantee letters ng MyFit within DOH. End of the month or mid-February.
That we need to see.
Pero yun nga yung tanong ko, nung isang araw may penalties ba? Dahil kung walang penalties, edi hindi rin susundin
hindi
yun.
mo naman mapipigilan. Although, ang sabi naman ni Sherwin Gatchalian, kapag nag-issue ng rules ang DOH at inutusan yung mga ospital, huwag nyo i-honor yan, although I doubt kung magagawa nila yun.
Oo, hindi mo magagawa yun.
Pwede mo utusan yung ospital huwag na kayong maghintay ng guarantee letters kasi matatagalan pa yung, eto pa na ako sa ospital matatagalan yung paglabas ng pera nyo, ng reimbursement. Yun, pwedeng panakot yun.
Pero Ami,
pag dinaan sa GL, matatagalan yung reimbursement. Pwede nilang gawin yung rule na yun kung talagang seryoso sila.
pero Ami,
Kung talagang seryoso sila.
Ami, halimbawa ikaw
Pero
ay
parusa, wala.
Halimbawa ikaw ay isang government employee, kausapin ka ng isang congressman o senador, makakatanggi ka ba?
Ang hindi makakatanggi, yung cabinet member nga, lalo
Siyempre,
yung
yung
nababalitaan na baka matanggal.
Oo.
No? Pero yung bureaucracy, pwede, civil service sa mga yan.
Oo.
Pwede mo silang utusan. Susunod dyan, lalo na kung mga medyo militante din yung maraming health worker tayo na nagpa-follow niyang mga issue na yan. At baka nga magustuhan nila actually, nagutusan sila ng ganun.
Yeah,
And they will carry
let's
it out.
let's see how the guidelines fall into place. Kasi nga, as we were talking about last week, as early as a year or two ago pa, meron ng guidelines ang DSWD dun sa
EPAL
policy.
EPAL.
Oo, dun sa distribution, sa
EPAL yun.
distribution. Pero like what we were pointing out nga last week pa, the distribution is the end point of what has become a political process of ayuda. The beginning point is the letter of guarantee.
Endorsement.
Endorsement, yeah. So meron kang end point, meron kang beginning point. So
Yan
you would
ayan
have
na
to
si
that's
Richard. Ayan o.
Andiyan na si Richard?
Chismoso. Ayan na si Richard.
Talagang
Chismoso.
Richard, are you there?
Happy New Year po, Happy New Year.
Oh, happy New Year.
Mukhang may mga darating pa ibang abduction Kamusta kayo?
Parang
Sinasabi si
Ay,
Lola
chismis
dito
na kami sa'yo.
sabi kasi kanina, 5 minutes na nag-aayos ka pa ng buhok. Sabi ko, kulang 5 minutes doon. Sa akin kasi, less than 5 seconds, ayos na buhok ko
Sino? Lalabay
may
lang
5
yung
seconds ba? May natita pang 5 seconds.
Oo. Alam mo yung chismis mo, sabi mo kasi, kita mo yung warrant of arrest. No? Ba't di mo naman kami dinadala ng kopya?
Alam mo naman, same circles lang tayo sa Ronald habang yung nagpa 5 seconds ka nag-aayos ay nagpakita ng mga dokumentos. No, I'm sure the good senator already knows this too. Kaya nga, are we sure even where he is right now, diba? And I'm sure this team is also preparing for contingencies and all that. May kinalaman din siguro yung request ni Congressman Pulong na the Supreme Court should be involved. Not only retrospectively on dun sa ICC handover of former President Duterte, but I think this is also relevant to potentially new arrests to come in the coming weeks and months. No, so naalala ko noong 2024 pinagtawanan kami ni Justice Carpio when we said, although noon hindi pa namin nakita yung copy ng warrant of arrest, but we were told by very authoritative sources na yun yung direction of tuwin. Naalala ko pinagtatawanan tayo, and then next thing you know, nangyari talaga last year yung arrest ni President Duterte. But we know that this is not just a question of law, this is not just a question of determination ng ICC, this is also operational. Operational security, hindi na to a secret to a great degree, but It's a question of operational security and operational enforcement. In the case of President Duterte, of course, there was a surprise element. Partly the surprise that Digong himself was not smart enough to realize that if he didn't want to stay in China, if indeed China was not willing to give him the kind of gilded exile that he was having in mind, a la Maduro in Turkey, allegedly was also offered the gilded exile that he didn't take. Then if he were to fly back to Philippines, dapat sana kinuha niya yung private jet to go bypassing Manila, maybe via Cebu, or go straight to Davao. He had the option.
Pero Richard, ang tanong kasi ni Ami, ay nakita mo ba yung warrant? Para alam niya kung gagawin niyang headline ng Philippine Star bukas.
Kumbaga, nakita mo.
Kung naglalakad ka kasi, sabi mo, nakita mo na yung warrant eh. No?
Basta may nakita tayo, yes, may nakita tayo. Unless my eyes are lying to me or kailangan ko na check yung grado ng aking mata.
But what did you see? What was the wording? And where the document is from what agency to what agency?
Si Ami kasi nagsusulat na eh.
Baka kailangan ko ng I might need to introduce you to someone else who might have even more time. Literally, Sir Ronald, that it's almost like the 5 seconds you had to fix your hair. I really had 5 seconds to go to. Kasi I was also wondering, totoo ba tong barangay Bato? Because we always question, ano ba talagang address niya? Where is this name Bato coming from? So I have jokingly asked someone, is that really the address? And then the next thing I know, I did not only see the address, I saw the logo, I saw the signature. Everything that suggests to me that indeed yung nakita natin is a legit document suggesting that indeed Senator Bato could be next in line. Having said that, should we be surprised? I mean, if they went after President Duterte, it was just a matter of time they go after the COO and other key perpetrators ng drug war, which allegedly led to mass extrajudicial killings. But yun na, as we say, feeling ko yung government because this is an operational issue. Kaya nga before you cut me, Sir Ronald, I was about to say, yung kay Digong, medyo naswerte yung gobyerno dyan because it looks like there was counterintelligence involved, there was false information involved. So much so na nakita natin si Harry Roque na supposedly, allegedly may mga tweety birds sa Department of Justice among others, mukhang he was fed false information, whether double agent to or whether false information, misinformation to. So it was a very sophisticated operation to get Digong immediately out of NAIA, put him in Villamor base, get the private jet ready, get everything together. And when I was in Netherlands also, last year I confirmed that there were not one but two different stopovers. So imagine the logistical nightmare that the Philippine government had to go to, talking to two different stopovers for the private jets before arriving dyan sa Hague, si former President Rodrigo Duterte. So now the element of surprise is gone. Mukhang medyo open secret na yan. It looks like Bato. If I was able to see it, sino ba naman ako, Sir Ronald? Unlike you, I'm not someone important. I'm sure Bato has even better sources of information. So now it's a question of operational efficiency, timing, etc. And also yung sessions sa Senate. If sabihin natin by some magic, he gets to the session, nagsimula ng Senate, what is it? Are we looking at the siege of the Senate? So it also matters ano yung mga negotiations potentially with the Senate leadership in terms of execution of this matter. But then again, I mean, from what I saw, that looked to me like the warrant of arrest. But again, I could be wrong the same way I could have been wrong about sinabi natin about Duterte's warrant of arrest.
But do you remember if it was a diffusion order that did it have a heading? And number two, was there a date that you can remember?
The date is not too long from now. That's from what I remember. So, I'm not gonna say malapit yan doon sa sinabi nung isang dating secretary na it was not long ago. It was not long ago. So more or less it falls within the time frame that some of the ICC aware people have been mentioning over the past 6 months. Na it follows that kind of time frame. So I think this is sometime towards the end of last year. From what I remember. I hope I'm not wrong. Again, I had only a few seconds to look at it because this was very, parang biglaan lang yan, and it was a very confidential situation. I think these people knew that I already have my own sources in Europe and also they felt confident, but I didn't spend too much time on it. But from what I could see in terms of the logo, the signatures, the headlines, the pictures, the address, and all of that, it looks to me it ticks all the boxes. So for me, it's a question of operational execution from now on.
Pero Richard, nabanggit mo rin si Montulfo. Anong relasyon ni Montulfo dito sa warrant na ito?
No, I was not mentioning Montulfo. Secretary kasi Montulfo.
Akala ko nabanggit mo nung naglalakad ka na...
Basta ako, hindi ko alam kay Montulfo. Montulfo has his own tweeted birds and all of that. I don't know saan yun nakuha yung mga information niya. But ako, I'm talking about people who were verified sources of authoritative information in the past. Or people who I also know have access to the same authoritative persons who gave us a heads up that there would be a warrant of arrest for President Duterte mid-2024 pa lang. So that's the chain of custody or chain of verification I'm looking at. Hindi ko alam kay Montulfo. I'm sure he has his own interesting, colorful source.
Tama nga si Boying Remulla. Isang pangalan lang ang nandun, Richard, or two. At least two daw yun.
It could have been even more than two, but I only focus on that single person. But the speculation is that it could even be more than two.
About?
But yung
Speculation is
picture
more
ni Bato was very clear, like logo, picture niya, name niya, address niya, yung cases, and then dun sa towards the end, may signatures, ganon.
Parang hindi ka
I
naman...
don't think that was fabricated, and there was no reason to show me any fabricated document, like to serve what purpose.
Tsaka parang hindi ka magkakamali sa picture ni Bato.
Yeah, I mean, kung ikaw 5 seconds sa Ronald, ito baka 1 second ready na siya for interview. That's the picture I saw sa Ronald. Wag kang ganun sa Ronald, the South Korean president recently announced that the healthcare should also cover, among other things, yung magandang hair sa kabataan. So,
talaga?
this is the human rights issues sa Ronald.
Pwede ba mag-migrate doon?
Yun nga parang kailangan na I think hindi ka na-covered sa healthcare coverage na yan.
Nakita mo? Parang yung FBI wanted, no? Merong picture,
Yeah, I mean, it had all of the, it was quite similar to the one I saw of President Duterte. Yeah, it's very, very similar. Yeah. As I said, if someone as lowly as me, no, unlike Secretary Ronald and August journalists like you was able to have some sort of access to it, then I'm sure Bato also has an idea about this thing. Kaya nga, I'm still waiting. Is he gonna lilitaw ba siya or hindi? But again, I talk also to some other very high-level official, and the word that came out is parang nako po, parang magkakaroon ng political, hindi naman political civil war, but something along those lines. Na it looks like there is a recognition. This could be operationally difficult. Baka madulas ako eh. I'm just being very careful here.
What I find interesting is you said could be more than two. So, hindi lang mag-isa siya, hindi lang dalawa, maaari pang tatlo o higit. Did you see any other...
No, I didn't see the faces and addresses of the other people, but there was just like one page there where parang his name went along with other names. I don't exactly remember those. I was so transfixed by I was checking the signatures, I was checking the logo, among other things. I didn't pay as much attention. But of course, I think Attorney Cristina Conti, among other people, have said that potentially you're looking at another PNP chief, one Justice Secretary also during that time. And this is where I'm really at most 50-50. Potentially another senator also involved. So I think it depends also whether the Garma testimony is something that has been taken seriously by ICC. Because if the Garma testimony is taken seriously, then we're not looking only at one pro-Duterte senator, potentially two pro-Duterte senators could be on the crosshairs of ICC. Then that will create even more complications because we're talking about senators who won more than 20 million votes in the latest election. So we're not looking at, has-been figures or ex-presidents here or ex-officials. We're looking at pretty popular individuals. So I think operational speaking, talking to some officials who would be operationally in charge of this, even sila parang, medyo napapaisip sila about the complexities and the politics of this one. Kaya nga sabi nga, tama yung sinabi ni Secretary Ronald, like Liama said, like early this year pa lang, we might see fireworks. So kumbaga, baka yung nangyari sa Venezuela, ano lang yan. It's just softening the ground psychologically for even more capture/abductions this year.
Tapos kung dalawa kasi yan, you're looking at what? 2 out of 24 senators who may eventually have to cast a vote in case an impeachment trial goes forward this year. So that would be significant.
That would be significant, assuming, like abot yan sa point na yan with all the new rules that the Supreme Court has introduced. But there's also another discussion going on with insiders, and their argument is that if ever maging quote-unquote cardboard isa o dalawang senator, baka kailangan natin na magkaroon ng new also dynamics kung saan not 12 but more than 12 seats will be up for grabs in 2028 or ma-declare na vacant yung mga seats na yan, because we're talking about potentially newly elected senators, right, last year. So this could also have implications for the Senate seat up for grabs in the 2020 election. So ganun na yung level of discussion ngayon, hindi lang in terms of enforcement, also implication for the vacant seat, potentially permanently vacant seat up until 2028, and whether the COMELEC should declare open seats, a 13th or even a 14th seats open for the 2020 election. So may mga ganun conversation. So the implications will be a lot, in addition to the very, I would say, speculative potential that we could go towards a second impeachment move against the vice president, assuming there's enough number in the Congress, or assuming the impeachment would be triggered by the investigation of the current ombudsman, which is another matter that I'm sure Secretary Ronald has more information about.
Pero yung isang dating cabinet secretary ni Digong, ang request ay reverse rendition. May request siya, may letter siya kay Trump na kinuha si Maduro, dinala sa US. Ang letter niya, letter niya, kulin si Digong, isoli sa Pilipinas. No? Reverse rendition.
Oh, wow! Parang circular economy, parang
Yes. Dahil nga daw,
ang nakita ko yung bring him home version ni Maduro, na bring him home din. Meron din palang ganun sa Ronald. Did you see that? Meron din bring him home. Very similar dun sa bring him home dun sa ex-human rights lawyer. At
serious letter ni
Belgica. Si dating
Pero-
PACC.
Pero wait lang, hindi ba yung nag-meow-meow, sabi niya, pabdak na rin yung presidente natin ngayon or something along those lines. I mean, hindi ata, wala atang chatroom yung mga kaibigan natin sa sa DDS camp. They're saying completely contradictory things. First, umasa sila that Trump will save Digong, and then hindi nangyari yan. Second, they see Trump basically bad-mouthing Duterte in front of Marcos. Now some of them are delusionally calling for Trump to, abduct Marcos. And then some of them are saying, let's do this trade whereby you get Maduro, you bring back, someone else from ICC. And then there's another discourse which is, dudurugin sana ang US daw, ang ICC. Because of course, the US, this is a serious issue, the US has imposed sanctions on personalities and also the very institution of ICC. So it remains to be seen how the European Union ay sasalo dito. Because so far, to be honest, dun sa mga diplomatic responses ng mga European countries, I remember the Greek Prime Minister saying, let's not discuss the legalities of this matter. That's quite a shocking statement coming from a European leader, considering the European Union is supposed to stand for a rules-based international order. Although you saw more nuanced responses from the French Foreign Minister, Macron a bit different, and also, of course, from the British also trying to hedge their bets, quite similar to the Australians, Kiwis, and also the DFA in the Philippines. So we are in very uncharted territories here right now, whereby even the mention of international law or criticism of capture abductions are many countries are even tiptoeing around that, to be frankly honest about this. But kung umaas ang DDS na Duterte supporters na magkaroon ng yung sinasabi ni Sir Ronald na circulation economy, malabo yan. But I found it even more curious for some of them to call on Trump to abduct Marcos, considering how much the US is invested in the continuity of the current administration and how much they're invested in not returning to what we had under Duterte, which was a very China-friendly and somehow skeptical of US foreign policy.
Yung
Tayo sa radar ng Trump administration o Richard.
Ano
Tayo
po?
sa radar nila. They are in the Western Hemisphere, Trump administration.
Well, ang basa ko, Ami, dito, is parang they want to get out of Europe. They want to get out of even Middle East to a certain degree, subcontracted to their key ally there. But they want to be in the Western Hemisphere and in the Pacific. So parang yun yung kanilang focus. So from Greenland to, Patagonia, and then from basically from New York to New
gusto
Delhi.
niya dito.
Yeah, New York to New Delhi,
we should be,
Greenland to Patagonia.
We should defend ourselves. Yun ang gusto niya.
Well, and he wants
Baka
everyone to
allies.
step up their defense spending.
baka yes and no, Ami. Dahil yung yung Western Hemisphere framework niya, intrinsically linked dito sa Asia Pacific, dito sa South China Sea. Dahil yung trade nila ay very crucial itong region na ito. So, hindi niya pwedeng sabihin na bahala na kayo dyan. No? Especially...
No, I'm talking about the military. Yung Korea, Japan, yung Taiwan, na they should spend more on their own self-defense. Hindi naman tayo binanggit, pero Yan ang,
Yeah,
yan ang ano,
I think, I mean, very good point on that. I don't know bakit si Ronald ang sumasagot. But anyways, going back to my goodness, si Sir Ronald, ang
economically,
tanong ibang
he is
sumasagot.
trying to work with China.
Yeah, I mean,
Economically.
and China also wants a deal. Kaya nga, I doubt yung idea na, baka bukas i-abduct ng China yung leader ng Taiwan. I find that a bit ridiculous in the short run, precisely because China now focuses the trade deal because it's really hurting them and they don't want it to escalate. And pangalawa, you know, no offense to Maduro, but you know, Taiwan is not the current very degraded regime. Not to mention there was split within my pro-Cuban, my medyo Cuban skeptic elements within the Chavista regime. Sobrang iba. Not to mention the weapon systems Taiwan uses are NATO systems, the most advanced systems. So baka reverse pa nga yung situation. And it's going to be much more geopolitical difficult because Japan is invested in Taiwan and potentially also us. And so I don't see that happening. But in the long run though, I think the problem I see here is manonormalize itong spheres of influence mindset. So that's where, Ami, your point is very correct. That, you know, you already saw that with Putin looking at the wars in the Middle East is saying, oh, wait lang, what about my own backyard? So you saw the operation in Georgia in 2008, and then, of course, in Ukraine 2014 and 2022. And then, of course, China is the only superpower who's still not moving in that direction, meaning kinetic action to enforce their claims or somehow version of spheres of influence. So that's going to be a worry. And let's not forget, even the most authoritarian regimes have domestic politics. They have factional wars, pragmatist versus maximalist. Even the most authoritarian regimes have pretensions to ideological purity or to some sort of moral ascendancy. I mean, just watch the speeches of Putin. I'm sure everyone finds it cynical, but to him, probably in his internal audience, he's finding some moral justification for whatever invasion he's doing in neighboring countries. So the worry here is, especially from a lot of China watchers, is that the hand of the hawks in China will be strengthened. Not to mention, tactically, the Chinese are very carefully watching how on earth did the U.S., because this was a tactical brilliance, how they completely inactivated, assuming there was no total inside job, all the Chinese radars and the Russian missile defense systems. There were half a dozen S-300 missiles, there were Chinese radars, completely, parang na-EMP sila ala Godzilla eh. Parang ganun ang ginawa nila eh. Totally paralyzed. So the same way the Chinese studied the Iraq War, the Gulf War, and the U.S. NATO operations in Serbia in the 1990s, they're also going to watch very carefully here if ever in 10, 15 years they want to do the same thing. Maybe not to Taipei, maybe to the Philippines. I mean, I have jokingly asked some Filipinos, like, Filipinos who could be our next presidents, are you worried that one day bagawin ng China sa iyan? So in the short run, I don't buy that argument. But you're right, Ami, if we normalize the spheres of influence, kind of mindset and geopolitics and kind of rule of the jungle, then long term, in 5 to 10 years, we should worry if China is going to do the same thing to hostile, supposedly hostile.
Pero Richard, ang usapin dito yung attitude ng US eh. Iba kasi yung mag-delink sila sa Europe, especially Eastern Europe. Iba yung mag-delink sila sa Middle East. Iba yung mag-delink sila dito sa South China Sea, sa Asia Pacific. Kaya yung sphere of influence ng China dito will have a lot of pushback. No? Kumpara halimbawa sa Europe, kumpara halimbawa sa Middle East, or even Africa. Dito kasi ay masyadong malalim yung link ng US economy dito sa ating rehiyon. At even yung future ng US economy ay nakatali dito sa Indo-Pacific, sa Japan, sa Australia, sa ASEAN. No? So it's a different thing. Pwede mo sabihin yung space of influence.
But don't forget, there's also the Greenland question. I mean, Denmark has made it clear, if the US makes any kind of, I don't know, parang Crimea style, biglang we take over Greenland, tapos ng NATO. Then we're looking at 4 poles of power. Western Europe, basically NATO, whatever remnants of Europe, NATO, US, Russia, China. Then it's going to be a completely different world. So that's why everyone is watching very carefully Greenland. I was in Greenland a few years ago, and the only major airport they have is run basically by Americans in Kangerlussuaq. And even there in the airport, you could see that this is a base that helped American operations against Soviet Union, American operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, etc. So the US already has a presence there in Greenland. So this is no joke anymore. So everyone is very carefully watching what's going to happen in Greenland, because that could be potentially the beginning of end, or the end of the chapter of transatlantic NATO alliance. So that's the
Richard, ng Greenland, it's part of the EU. Ang Venezuela is not part of anything. No? Ibig
Oh,
sabihin,
no, absolutely. I agree. But what I'm saying is that
economic at saka military agreement dun sa Venezuela with Latin
Greenland is
America.
administered by Denmark, di ba?
Yeah, it's Denmark.
Denmark, but actually
yeah.
the Greenland people themselves have some sort of autonomy here, and to be honest, for people are following and I talk to people there, they're also Inuits, they also don't like Denmark. So there were people actually, there are factions in Greenland government, local government, who wanted this game, to play this game of, playing Trump against Denmark to get more concession from Copenhagen. But now, Trump is, seamless. I mean, how many military operations has he conducted over the past 12 months, and he kind of got away with it in a way. Who knows? I mean, what's going on right now? So
yes, it's a distinct
Miller is
possibility.
now in charge of this Greenland operation. So
Yes, it's
honestly,
a distinct
I- very
possibility,
very
Richard.
territory,
It's a distinct possibility because of the lunacy of the US President. No? Pero iba pa rin talaga ang part ng NATO, part ng EU. Rather than halimbawa yung ginawa sa Middle East or ginawa niya sa Venezuela. Ang sabi ko lang, it's totally different. No, kung halimbawa,
Absolutely, and it's
pupuntahan
also a
niya-
question of, diba? I mean, Ronald, 40-45% of global manufacturing power is in our region, right?
Yeah.
Almost half of the world population will be here. Almost 60% of global
60%.
GDP will be in the Pacific. So honestly, Europe and Middle East are going to look small compared to our part of the world.
Yeah.
So there's no way you can be a superpower if you're not a superpower also in
our
Asia.
region.
That's the argument of people like John Mersheimer, who are very critical of what U.S. is doing in the Middle East, in Europe, and even Venezuela. But when it comes to Asia, even semi-isolationist realists like John Mersheimer would argue, you cannot lose Asia. You lose Asia, game over na yan, because this is where everything is going to be. All the manufacturing, like 90% of top-end chips are produced just in Taiwan alone, right? So if you look at it, Asia is too big to lose. So completely tama si Ronald. Hindi mutually exclusive. The US military is strong enough to reimpose the Monroe Doctrine, Dunroe Doctrine, whatever you want to call it, while being very, very active here in Asia. And I mean, what I would say here is that we should already talk about post-Trump world. I think even a J.D. Vance administration, and definitely under a Rubio administration, and who knows, even a Democratic administration, I will see that continuity, that there will be still absolute focus on Asia. And from what I get from talking to our counterparts in Washington, among others, is that meron silang parang strategic sympathy sa Pilipinas. Kasi ang point nila, ang yaman ng Taiwan, ang yaman ng Korea and Japan, bakit ang baba ng kaso sila? Kung yung mga Pilipino, hindi kaya mayaman, pero at least yung transparency initiative nyo, yung ingay nyo sa China, yung arbitration case nyo sa China, and not to mention the access you're giving us when it comes to EDCA, medyo sapat yan for now. So that's why you never hear Elbridge Colby, you never hear top officials in the U.S. Hegseth was here how many times? None of those times they said you're underspending because they feel we're already punching above our weight. But they do, and I think legitimately feel that the Europeans and the rich industrialized Asian neighbors like Japan, Korea are not spending enough. So to a certain degree, that argument has some credence, but not to our disadvantage. If anything, it has made us look more proactive and more useful as an ally to them.
Richard, I don't know if you've heard about this, pero there's been an apparent buildup of large U.S. military cargo planes in the UK. In the UK, for example, in the last week, at least 10 C-17 Cargo Master aircraft have landed in the UK, and a lot of people are saying that this might be pointing to some sort of special operations by the U.S. military as ordered by President Trump. I don't know if it has anything to do with Greenland, but it's raising quite a few eyebrows.
Nawala ako.
Well, I mean, I was also hearing that there were Delta forces in Iraq also. It's like the other day. So I think this is going to be the new face of American foreign policy, show force, flexing muscle. I think what Pete Hegseth was saying the other day during the press conference of President Trump, that's going to be basically how they're going to approach it. You know, we are called the Department of War for a reason. We're going to show you that our long arms are going to reach anywhere, any place on Earth. So that kind of Fox News anchor kind of talk is now basically part and parcel of the American DNA in terms of its foreign policy. So yeah, I'm looking at build-up of forces not too far from Greenland, not too far from U.S. adversaries in the Middle East. So yeah, we're monitoring all of these movements. U.S. is still a military superpower. We are a more multipolar world technologically, economically, but military, I think even Noam Chomsky's of this world would admit the U.S. is still the dominant military force. And as correctly pointed out, there may have been weapons used in the Venezuela operations that we still are not fully aware of. I mean, the U.S. may have used some very cutting-edge technology here that adversaries like China are very carefully watching. So U.S. still has the ace up their sleeves when it comes to military superiority and projection of power. And guess what? That's perfect for Trump, because Trump was never isolationist. I don't know where people got this idea of isolationist. He was never isolationist. He belongs to what you call the Jacksonian tradition in American foreign policy. They are not in nation building. They're not in promotion of democracy and like, very transactional. And when they need to be, to do it, they'll show force, but in a short time, like one big knockout punch. That's what they're going to do. And in fact, if you look at all the major military operations by Trump administration in past year, it was very much like that. One big bombing, one big abduction, and then we're out. We're not going to do nation building. Gunboat diplomacy, but we're not going to send ground troops. Or at least so far, that's the kind of Jacksonian foreign policy we're seeing from President Trump. So no, he never was isolationist. He's very Jacksonian. And people forget, isa sa mga idol niya sa foreign policy, everyone mentions Roosevelt, but actually McKinley, the very guy who played the role in the Philippines, right? And let's not also forget the first head of state abducted, captured by Americans was Filipino, President Aguinaldo, right? So actually you have to just look at American history in the Philippines, the colonization of the Philippines in the late 20th century, and we are seeing echoes of that. That's very much the kind of foreign policy they have in mind, perhaps, for the 21st century, at least as far as the current dispensation of power in the White House is concerned. So for us Pinoys, this sounds familiar. This sounds very 100 years ago familiar.
Well, you know, gunboat diplomacy harks back to the early part of the last century. I think by this time it's already gunship diplomacy.
Well, ang problema kasi ni Trump ay hindi siya pwedeng bumalik sa nakaraan na it's a mixture of direct intervention, direct invasion, at saka creating puppet governments. Diba? Yung mga sinasabi natin ng mga banana republics dati sa Latin America. Ngayon, wala kang magagawang puppet eh. Halimbawa sa Venezuela. Governing Venezuela through a puppet. At the same time, boots on the ground ay hindi ganun kadali sa Latin America. You will have international brigades coming from all over Latin America, from Chile to Uruguay, from Mexico to Cuba, etc. So, it will be very hard to govern. Ang tanong ngayon, ano ba ang gagawin ni Trump? No? If he cannot go create a puppet state, and at the same time, iniiwasan niya yung boots on the ground, ano yung gitna? What will be the middle ground for him? Diba? So, ang problema kasi ng US, they cannot win the peace. Not in Afghanistan, not in Iraq, not in Libya, diba? Not in Syria. No? So, may problema silang ganun eh. No? They may win, no? In terms of a military offensive, but in terms of pulling out, no, and governing, medyo hirap sila. Yun yung problema
as well, you correctly pointed out, there's also some sort of split within the MAGA movement on how to do the MAGA, right? Is MAGA more isolationist, meaning bahalang mundos on their own, we're just here to protect ourselves and our hemisphere? Or is MAGA more like what people like Marco Rubio have in mind, right? So there's also some internal, I would say, not factions, but at least different strands of thinking within the Trump administration. And Trump being a politician, he's also trying to balance these different things. So on one hand says, oh, we're going to run Venezuela. On the other hand, you're hearing his top officials saying, oh, no, we're not running Venezuela. We just have a new arrangement with the new regime in Venezuela. And then there's another version, oh, no, we have a Roosevelt corollary. We just have gunboats there just in case, gunboat diplomacy there just in case our new counterparts in Venezuela are not getting the message, right? So, kumbaga, ano yun eh, parang yung sinabi ni Deng Xiaoping, let's cross the river and feel the stones. May pagkagano na nangyari. So, of course, Ronald, you cannot replicate 19th century, but as Mark Twain said, right, history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And I see rhymes here, definitely, and with 21st century characteristics. Ami, did we answer your question? Medyo, you opened the Pandora's box. Ang medyo mahabang discussion yun, the Jacksonian foreign policy, MAGA.
Okay lang.
Ang tanong ni Ami, Richard, kung nakita mo yung warrant of arrest, tapos kung saan-saan na umabot.
Oo nga eh. Teka, nakita mo ba? Is this a soft copy or hard copy?
Well, printed siya, so hard copy siya. But it could be printed from a digital copy. But I didn't see a stamp. Wala akong nakitang stamp eh. Na parang ito fresh from the oven or something like that. Anyway, let's just end on that note. Baka madulas ako. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much, guys. I have to go another podcast. Alright, salamat. Talk to you soon.
Tumakas na, tumakas.
May ginagaya ako eh. Yung kabilang-kabila para kabilang channel agad. Salamat.
Thank you.
At kita ko talaga umalis siya.
Ayun, pag naiipit na yun.
Actually, mas matunog yung yung dalawang senador ang mahuhuli. Wala na raw si Albayalde, hindi na daw kukunin eh.
Pero yung isang
So,
senador,
more
hindi pa
likely
nagtatago.
2 senators.
Yung isang senador, hindi pa
O, isa lang ang
nagtatago.
nagtatago.
Nandun pa sa kwan eh. Dumadalo pa sa Senate hearings.
Isa pa lang yata kasi yung diffusion order which came out late last year.
So, yun ang abangan natin. Okay. I guess that's it. Magpaalam tayo ng maaga ngayon. Bakit?
Mahaba pa.
May gusto ko masabihin?
Hindi naman. Akala ko
Mukhang nag-enjoy ka masyado.
Meron pa na tayo more than 5 minutes. Akala ko mag-geopolitics first ni Richard rin.
Bigla tayo tinakasan. Tinakot mo ata eh.
Remember, hindi recognized ng US ang legitimacy ni Maduro.
Yeah.
They never recognized his election. They never recognized his government.
It doesn't
Importante
matter.
yun dun sa UN kapag pinag-uusapan yun sa UN.
Yeah.
Yan ang sabihin nila
Pero it
Hindi
doesn't
naman
matter.
government yan
It doesn't matter dahil nga it's a sovereign state It's recognized by the whole of Latin America and most of the countries around the world. So,
Yan ang titingnan natin yung reaction ng mga
kahit hindi siya recognized ng US, it's still a violation of international law. Yun yung problema dyan.
It's like the ICC. Hindi siya recognized ng US.
So,
Kaya nga.
In fact, sanctioned siya ng
Titingnan
US.
meron siyang binuksan na Pandora's box na baka hindi na niya masoli. Yun ang sinasabi. Pero hindi ako naniniwala na magfo-focus ang US doon lang sa kanilang hemisphere as a sphere of influence. Dahil very crucial sa kanilang Asia, where more than half of the world's economy ay nandito at almost 2/3 ng global population ay nandito. So hindi nila ito bibitawan at ibigay lamang sa China as a sphere of influence. This will be an area of contestation strategically for the superpowers.
Pero ang approach ni Trump is friendlier. Hindi siya yung hinahanap nating palaban sa China. He's reaching out to Xi.
Well, dati kasi,
Hindi yung confrontation
Nung nandiyan si
Hindi
Elon Musk,
confrontation kahit si Xi pareho
nung
silang
nandiyan-
dalawa.
Hindi, pero depende kung sino nakapalibot sa kanya. Nung nandiyan si Elon Musk, yun ang pinaka-pro-China sa cabinet. Nung natanggal si Elon Musk, si Rubio ngayon yung crucial. And Rubio is very anti-China. No, ganoon din si Vance. So depende kung sino nakapalibot kay Trump na mag-i-implement ng policy.
Wala kang ginagawa sa atin. Ilang beses na tayong tinira dito ng wala namang ginagawa. Kaya,
Meron ka
We have to
mga
invest in
assurances
our
ng
own
ironclad
self-defense.
commitments ironclad
Mas
commitments.
ang bago ngayon ay yung attempt ng China na i-co-op ang Korea against Japan. Yun yung latest.
hindi nila magagawa yun.
Yun yung latest Tapos may pinirmahan kasi ang Korea vis-a-vis China na ikinagalit ng Japan. Just yesterday. Just yesterday. Dahil yung dynamics ng Korea at saka ng Japan, nagamit ng China. Nagamit niya. Kaya yung presidente ng Korea, kababalik lang from China. At may pinirmahan siya na agreement with China na kinagalit ng Japan.
Because these relationships go way back. Korea was annexed by Japan
Yeah, they have been fighting each other for 1,000
in the
years.
first part of the last century.
Yes.
And then, during the Korean War, the Chinese also stepped in and helped the North Koreans.
Pero kampi ng North Korea at China. Remember.
Oh, yeah.
Kaya
In North
ganyan.
Korea, yeah. The Chinese crossed the Yalu River.
Hindi naman yung mga Koreano, yung mga South Korean, alam naman nila yung ginagawa nila.
Okay, mag-goodbye na tayo. Baka saan pa tayo mapunta, mamaya. Okay, biglang bumalik si Richard. Sige kayo. Okay, thank you for joining Storycon today. Aming pabituan ng Editor-in-Chief ng Philippine Star at Raul Llamas, our resident, our priceless political pundit.
Priceless.
Di ba? Okay, join us again tomorrow at 4 p.m. for Storycon. I'm Madeline Gao, kapatid. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.